The year is 1842, and a fever has taken hold of New York City. From the bustling wharves to the elegant parlors of Fifth Avenue, a single topic dominates conversation. A line, thick with anticipation, snakes down Broadway, a river of humanity willing to part with a precious 25 cents, a significant sum for the working person, all for a glimpse of a miracle. They have come to Barnum's American Museum to witness the impossible made flesh, a genuine mermaid, hauled from the exotic waters of the Fiji Islands. It is promised to be a creature of legend, a stunning scientific revelation, the missing link between man and fish that would rewrite the very laws of nature. But hidden beneath the shroud of spectacle and the breathless headlines, a very different truth lurked. The miracle was a monstrous fiction, a carefully stitched together grotesquerie. And the man behind the curtain was not a renowned naturalist or a daring explorer, but a consummate showman named P.T. Barnum, a man who operated on a single cynical principle that would define his legacy: that there's a sucker born every minute. This is the story of that audacious deception, the tale of the Fiji mermaid. While it may not have been his most profitable venture, it stands as his most brilliant and revealing masterpiece of public manipulation. The scheme was a perfect engine of hype, a psychological play that did more than just trick the gullible. It ensnared respected experts in its web, captivated and complicit newspapers, and masterfully leveraged the public's own desire for wonder. In doing so, it didn't just fill Barnum's coffers. It forged the very legend of the world's greatest showman. The enduring question at the heart of this spectacle isn't simply how he pulled it off, but something far more profound about human nature. Why were millions so eager to believe? To understand the sheer audacity of the Fiji mermaid, one must first understand the man who orchestrated its rise to infamy. Long before the phrase "the greatest show on earth" echoed across circus tents, there was simply Phineas Taylor Barnum, a young man from Bethel, Connecticut, whose early life was a catalogue of restless ambition and financial false starts. He was not an inventor, an artist, or a scholar. His genius was not in creating wonders, but in packaging and selling them. He possessed an almost preternatural understanding of the public's appetite for the extraordinary, and a complete lack of scruple when it came to satisfying it. After a series of failures, including a bankrupt dry goods store, Barnum's moment of revelation came not with a beautiful illusion, but with a wizened, blind, and nearly paralyzed enslaved woman named Joyce Haight. In 1835, Barnum purchased the rights to exhibit Haight, who was being presented as the 161-year-old former nurse of George Washington. The story was meticulously crafted. She would share intimate, heartwarming details of dear little George, nursing him and raising him, a living, breathing relic of the nation's founding father. The public flocked to see this miraculous artifact of history, and Barnum, with a fledgling showman's instinct, stoked the flames of controversy. He cleverly planted anonymous letters in newspapers, questioning her authenticity, understanding that debate was not a threat but free advertising. It was a masterstroke. People came to decide for themselves, and Barnum profited from their skepticism as much as their belief. For months, the exhibit was a sensation, making Barnum a small fortune and, more importantly, a household name. The entire enterprise, of course, was a lie. When Joyce Haight died in 1836, the spectacle reached its final macabre act. Barnum arranged a public autopsy in a New York City hall, selling tickets to 1,500 curious spectators. The attending physician's conclusion was swift and damning. Based on her physical condition, Haight was unlikely to be older than 80. The hoax was exposed for all to see. This was the moment a lesser huckster would have seen his career evaporate in a cloud of public ridicule. But for Barnum, it was a second act. With breathtaking audacity, he pivoted. He claimed he himself had been the victim of a previous owner's deception. He portrayed himself as a gullible innocent, swindled just like everyone else. He then floated a new, even more outrageous theory, that the body autopsied was a substitute, and the real Joyce Haight was still alive and touring England. This series of events surrounding Joyce Haight established the foundational pillars of the Barnum playbook. First, the attraction itself. Something shocking, emotionally resonant, and seemingly validated by history or science. Second, the use of the press to generate controversy, knowing that the public's need to resolve a debate was a more powerful draw than simple curiosity. And third, and perhaps most crucially, the masterful management of the aftermath when the deception was inevitably uncovered. Barnum learned that he didn't need the public to believe the hoax was real forever. He only needed them to believe it might be real long enough to buy a ticket. He transformed exposure from a fatal blow into a mere plot twist in his own ongoing narrative, ensuring that the conversation, and his name, remained in the headlines. The Joyce Haight affair was not a scandal that ended his career. It was the prototype for everything that was to come, a brutal and brilliant education in the art of the humbug that would soon be perfected with a mythical creature from the South Seas. Flush with the capital and, more importantly, the notoriety gained from the Joyce Haight affair, Barnum sought a permanent stage for his unique brand of entertainment. He founded in 1841 on the corner of Broadway and N Street in New York City, a failing natural history collection called Scudder's American Museum. Barnum transformed it. He didn't merely rename it Barnum's American Museum. He re-engineered it into a vibrant, chaotic, and overwhelming laboratory of human psychology. This 5-story marble facade became a gateway to the impossible, a place where the burgeoning ideals of Victorian self-improvement and education collided headlong with a pure, unadulterated thirst for spectacle. The museum was, in essence, a physical manifestation of Barnum's worldview, a place where the line between fact and fiction was not just blurred, but deliberately erased for maximum profit and engagement. Stepping inside was an assault on the senses. The air was thick with the smell of the crowd, the oddities, and the promise of discovery. Every corner, every shelf, every stage was crammed with a dizzying array of exhibits designed to captivate, confuse, and convince. On one floor, a visitor could encounter legitimate scientific specimens, mineral collections, preserved animal specimens, and anthropological artifacts from distant lands. But these were strategically placed alongside, and given the same credence as outright fabrications. The Fiji mermaid would not have been displayed in a den of iniquity. It was presented in a hall of learning, surrounded by the trappings of scholarship, forcing the public to question not the exhibit's authenticity, but their own ability to discern truth from fiction in a curated environment. Barnum's genius lay in his understanding of the audience's desire. He recognized that the emerging middle class, hungry for culture and enlightenment, didn't just want to see something real. They wanted to see something amazing. They wanted their minds expanded and their realities challenged. The American Museum catered to this perfectly. It was a wonder cabinet on a monumental scale, offering a curated journey through the strange and marvelous. Patrons could marvel at the Cardiff giant, a petrified man later revealed to be a carved gypsum statue, and then minutes later watch a performance by General Tom Thumb, a very real person with dwarfism whose celebrity was a manufactured product of Barnum's promotional engine. There were living curiosities, whom Barnum presented with a mix of sensationalism and a veneer of scientific detachment. Siamese twins, giants, and bearded ladies, all framed as natural wonders for public edification and entertainment. The museum itself was a masterclass in aggressive modern marketing. Barnum pioneered tactics that are now standard in the entertainment industry. He flew massive flags from the building's roof, each one a banner advertising a new attraction. He stationed a brass band on a second-floor balcony, filling the street with music and drawing crowds that blocked traffic. He posted elaborate, hyperbolic illustrated posters across the city, each one promising a more incredible experience than the last. Inside, he created a labyrinthine floor plan that required visitors to pass by every single retail counter, selling souvenirs, snacks, and pamphlets to see all the exhibits. He even installed the first-ever museum light show, using a new invention called the limelight to illuminate his building at night, making it a beacon of wonder in the growing metropolis. This controlled chaos was all by design. The sheer volume of stimuli, the genuine, the fake, the educational, the sensational, created a state of overwhelmed credulity in the visitor. In this environment, skepticism was exhausting. It was easier and far more enjoyable to suspend disbelief and surrender to the spectacle. The museum was not a place for quiet contemplation, but for collective gasp and shared debate. Barnum watched the crowds, studied their reactions, and learned precisely what levers to pull. He discovered that controversy sold more tickets than consensus, that mystery was more profitable than truth, and that the public's desire to believe in the extraordinary was the most powerful and renewable resource he could tap. The American Museum was more than a building. It was the engine of the Barnum legend, a factory of wonder where reality was the raw material, and the finished product was always, unmistakably, a show. The stage was set at his American Museum, but Barnum needed a star attraction worthy of his grand theater of deception. That star arrived not with a fanfare, but in a crate of intrigue. In 1842, the opportunity presented itself in the form of a truly bizarre artifact, a desiccated, mummified creature purportedly caught near the Fiji Islands in the South Pacific. It was not the beautiful, seductive siren of maritime folklore, but something far stranger and more sinister. This was the specimen that would become known as the Fiji mermaid. The man who brought it to America was a Boston sea captain named Samuel Barrett Eads, who had bankrupted himself acquiring it from Japanese sailors. Seeing both the object's potential and its previous owner's folly, Barnum approached the situation with characteristic cunning. He did not purchase the mermaid outright. Instead, he masterfully negotiated a lease, creating a crucial layer of deniability. This was not his mermaid. He was merely exhibiting it, a subtle legal fiction that would allow him to distance himself if the hoax was exposed too quickly. But Barnum had no intention of letting it fail. Before a single New Yorker had laid eyes on the thing, he began his most brilliant promotional campaign yet. He planted a series of anonymous, meticulously detailed letters in major newspapers, purportedly from an excited naturalist, describing the astounding Fiji mermaid and the thrilling tale of its discovery in the distant South Seas. He was not selling an exhibit. He was selling a scientific revelation, and he made sure the public was hungry for it before they even knew what it was. When the crate was finally opened, the reality was far removed from the beautiful creature the public had been primed to imagine. The Fiji mermaid was a grotesque, 3-foot-long monstrosity, a testament to the macabre artistry of its creators. It was a Frankenstein's monster of the natural history world, an object that inspired revulsion more than wonder. Later analysis would reveal its true anatomy: the head and torso of a juvenile monkey meticulously, if crudely, stitched to the desiccated tail of a large fish, likely a salmon or a cod. The join was hidden with clever applications of skin and papier-mâché, and the whole assembly was given a ghastly, withered appearance. Its face was frozen in a grimace, its lips pulled back to reveal tiny, pointed teeth, and its claws were outstretched as if in a final, agonized protest. To any modern or even moderately skeptical eye, it was clearly a constructed object, a ghastly doll. But Barnum understood a fundamental truth of human psychology. In the face of conflicting information, people often distrust their own senses. He knew that the public, confronted with this ugly artifact, would struggle to reconcile it with the beautiful mermaid of legend and the glowing reports in their newspapers. This cognitive dissonance was the crack through which doubt could enter, and Barnum was ready to fill that crack with the cement of apparent authority. To bridge the gap between the public's expectation and the hideous reality, Barnum knew he needed to bypass their eyes and appeal directly to their trust in established institutions. For this, he engineered a masterstroke of legitimacy. He hired a man named Levi Lyman to play the part of Dr. J. Griffin, a distinguished British naturalist affiliated with the entirely fictitious Lyceum of Natural History in London. Lyman, as Griffin, was the perfect accomplice, well-spoken, confident, and possessing just enough scientific jargon to sound convincing. Before the mermaid went on display at the museum, Barnum orchestrated a series of lectures for the New York press at a separate, respectable hotel. Dr. Griffin would appear before the gathered reporters, holding the specimen, and deliver a learned pseudoscientific lecture. He spoke of its anatomical features, its place in the natural order, and presented it not as a mythical being, but as a genuine, if unusual, zoological specimen. The press, eager for a legitimate scientific story, reported his findings as fact. By lending the mermaid the air of academic credibility, Barnum gave the public, and the newspapers, the permission structure they needed to believe. He provided an expert opinion that overrode their own initial skepticism. People were no longer looking at a strange, ugly object and wondering if it was real. They were looking at a certified scientific marvel and wondering why they couldn't see its beauty. The illusion was complete. The stage-managed controversy of Joyce hate had evolved into a far more sophisticated con. The creation of a total self-validating reality where the authority of science itself was the primary prop. The carefully orchestrated campaign, blending sensational journalism with the illusion of scientific legitimacy, achieved exactly what Barnum had intended: a citywide, and soon a nationwide mania. From the moment the Fiji mermaid was unveiled at the American Museum, it became a cultural phenomenon. The streets outside Barnum's establishment were clogged with carriages and pedestrians, all converging on Broadway and N Street. Long, snaking lines of patrons, from wide-eyed shopgirls to skeptical businessmen to entire families on a day's outing, waited for their turn to enter the hall and peer into the glass case. They paid their 25 cents, a price Barnum had strategically set to be accessible yet meaningful, and filed past the exhibit. The reactions were a study in human credulity and confusion. Some gasped in awe, seeing in the grotesque, grimacing face the proof of nature's infinite variety. Others scoffed, pointing out the obvious seams and the absurdity of the creature. But the genius of Barnum's scheme was that both reactions served his purpose. The debate over the mermaid's authenticity did not happen in private parlors alone. It spilled into the streets, the newspapers, and the workplace, creating a self-perpetuating cyclone of free advertising. Barnum, ever the master of plausible deniability, never explicitly declared the mermaid to be genuine. His advertisements and his experts presented the evidence: the thrilling story of its discovery, the scientific analysis of Dr. Griffin, and then left the public to draw its own conclusion. He was not selling a fact. He was selling a fascinating question, and the audience, in their thousands, were paying for the privilege of being part of the conversation. Inevitably, the truth began to seep out. Rival showmen, envious of Barnum's success, publicly denounced the mermaid as a fraud. Some of the sailors involved in its original transport came forward with tales of its construction. The press, which had once breathlessly reported its marvels, now pivoted to expose its deceptions, reveling in the scandal with the same vigor they had once shown in promoting the wonder. The seams, both literal and metaphorical, were showing. Yet, when the final curtain was pulled back and the Fiji mermaid was widely acknowledged to be a constructed fake, something remarkable happened. Barnum's empire did not crumble. The crowds at the American Museum did not vanish in a wave of angry indignation. In fact, business continued to thrive. This was the most profound revelation of the entire affair, the true "so what?" that separated Barnum from a common conman. The public's reaction to the exposure demonstrated that they were not merely passive victims of a clever trick. They had been willing participants in a collective experience. They had not paid their quarter solely to see a real mermaid. They had paid for the thrill of the maybe, for the chance to be astonished, to debate, and to share in a city-wide sensation. The exposure of the hoax became just another chapter in the story, another twist in the narrative that Barnum was crafting, not just of his attractions, but of his own persona as the clever showman who could fool the world. This gets to the very heart of Barnum's legacy and the changing nature of entertainment in antebellum America. The public's tolerance for the humbug was not born of stupidity, but of a new social contract between the performer and the audience. In an era of rapid industrialization and social change, people were hungry for wonder and spectacle, for a temporary escape from the mundane. Barnum provided a space where the rules of the everyday were suspended. The Fiji mermaid, in all its ugly, exposed glory, was a catalyst for imagination. The audience understood, on some level, that they were engaging in a game. The pleasure was in the suspension of disbelief, in the communal act of wondering what if, even as the logical mind whispered that it was impossible. To be in on the joke, to have been part of the crowd that debated and dissected the great mystery, was a form of social currency. Barnum had not sold them a lie. He had sold them an experience, a story they could tell for years. The Fiji mermaid's greatest trick was not convincing people a monkey and a fish were a missing link. It was revealing that the line between being duped and being entertained was far thinner and far more profitable than anyone had previously imagined. The artifact itself was a failure, but the spectacle surrounding it was a resounding, era-defining success. The true, enduring impact of the Fiji mermaid hoax is that it was far more than an isolated curiosity. It was a prototype, a blueprint for the mechanics of modern attention that still governs our media landscape. Barnum's genius was not in the craftsmanship of the fake, but in the architecture of the belief system around it. He intuitively understood the potent fuel of controversy long before the advent of the 24-hour news cycle, recognizing that a heated argument generates more column inches and public interest than a settled fact. He mastered the art of using perceived authority, whether a fake naturalist or a complicit press, to lend credibility to a narrative, a tactic that echoes today in the world of sponsored influencers and partisan media pundits who present opinion as incontrovertible truth. The entire campaign was a masterclass in what we now call viral marketing, where he seeded the culture with mysterious letters and stoked the flames of debate, ensuring the story spread organically. In our current age of clickbait headlines, fabricated viral videos, and reality television storylines engineered for maximum drama, we see the ghost of Barnum's strategy. He demonstrated that the public sphere is not merely an arena for the exchange of ideas, but a marketplace of spectacles, where emotion often trumps evidence and a compelling story, true or not, can captivate millions. The Fiji mermaid, therefore, stands not just as a historical hoax, but as a primitive model for the very engine of modern media itself. The success of this scheme did more than just fill Barnum's coffers. It fundamentally cemented his legend and provided the operational capital, both financial and reputational, for everything that followed. The Fiji mermaid was the ultimate proof of concept for his core philosophy, that the American public's appetite for a good story was infinitely greater than their desire for dry, unadorned facts. Having demonstrated on a national scale that he could orchestrate reality itself, or at least the public's perception of it, Barnum's path was clear. The confidence and notoriety gained from this and other early humbugs empowered him to scale his operations to unprecedented levels. He went on to promote the international sensation of General Tom Thumb, create the sprawling touring spectacle that would eventually become the greatest show on earth, and even bring the Swedish nightingale, Jenny Lind, to America, turning her operatic tour into a media frenzy built as much on her manufactured persona as her genuine talent. The American Museum, with the mermaid as one of its star attractions, was the training ground and the launch pad. The Fiji mermaid hoax was the crucible in which the figure of P.T. Barnum, the legendary showman, was fully forged, transforming him from a mere promoter of curiosities into the architect of a new, distinctly American form of mass entertainment. And what of the creature that started it all? The object that launched 1,000 debates and built a cornerstone of an entertainment empire? It still exists. The very same Fiji mermaid, or at least one of its contemporary counterparts, resides not in a glittering hall of wonders, but in a quiet display case within Harvard University's Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology. Its context has been utterly transformed. It is no longer presented as a zoological marvel or a missing link, but as an artifact of human culture, a specimen of folk art and a testament to the history of deception and spectacle. Its presence there is the final, perfect twist in Barnum's story. It is no longer a wonder of nature, but a wonder of human credulity and cunning. It stands as a silent, withered monument to the enduring power of a well-told story. The greatest trick P.T. Barnum ever pulled was not convincing the world, even for a moment, that a monkey and a fish were a mermaid. His greatest trick was demonstrating that the line between deception and entertainment is often a matter of perspective, and that sometimes the most valuable commodity is not the truth, but the sheer, unadulterated joy of the show.